Hello, today we are going to be working on lesson 3.04, which is write equations of lines. Our objectives for today are to represent real-world situations with a linear equation in two variables, write the equation of a line given 2 points on the line, write the equation of a line given the slope of the line and a point on the line, and lastly, write the equation of a line given the slope of the line and the y-intercept. So let's just do a quick review. First form we have is the slope-intercept form. And the slope-intercept form of a linear equation is y equals mx plus b, where y and x are your variables, so those stay as your variables. M is your slope, and the b is your y-intercept. So the b, your y-intercept, is your starting point, and then you use your slope to help you graph some more points. Remember, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So let's go ahead and get some practice with our slope-intercept form. So the first one we want to do is we want to identify the slope and the y-intercept of our line y equals 3x plus 4. So remember, if we write the equation for slope-intercept form underneath, it's y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope, b is our y-intercept. So in this case, our m is 3. It's the number that is times the x, that's multiplied by the x. So it is 3. And with slope, because remember slope is rise over run, so if we think of it as a fraction, we just put it over 1. So the rise would be 3, meaning we would go up 3, and the run would be 1, meaning we go right 1. So up 3, right 1. You don't need to write it as a fraction, so you could just identify it as 3, but sometimes it's more helpful to write it as the fraction just to remember the rise over the run. And then the y-intercept, that is your b. So in this case, it is 4. So now let's write the equation in slope-intercept form if we're given the slope and the y-intercept. So our slope is 2/3. It's already written as a fraction, and the y-intercept is -2. So we have our y equals m, which remember m is our slope, so 2/3 times x plus b. Now in this case, our y-intercept is a negative, so we can just do -2. So you can do plus -2, or we can just do -2. We're going to go ahead and get into our like quiz questions. We're going to go a little bit out of order. So we're going to start off with like quiz question number 2. So just be aware of this when you're taking your quiz. Make sure, we'll get to like quiz question number 1. So make sure you're looking at that when you're taking question number 1, and you're looking at this one for question number 2. So we're just going a little bit out of order of the quiz, just because it makes a little more sense that way with teaching it. Okay, so like quiz question number 2, a line has a slope of -2/5 and a y-intercept of 6. Which is the equation of the line? So let's go ahead and let's just write the equation of the line ourselves, and then we can see which one is correct. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So now we can just plug in the given information. Our slope m is -2/5, and then that x plus our y-intercept, which is 6. So now if we look over here and see which one matches that, it's going to be b, y equals -2/5 x plus 6. So now let's talk about how we use slope-intercept form to graph a line. So we're going to look at an example where we want to graph y equals 2/3 x plus 1. The first thing we want to do is identify our slope and our y-intercept. Our slope, remember, is the number times the x. So in this case, it is 2/3. And our y-intercept is the number, or b, the number being added or subtracted to our group of x. So in this case, +1, or we could just say 1. Now if we think of the y-intercept as a point, remember your x value, we talked about this at the beginning of Unit 3, the x value is always going to be 0 for a y-intercept. And then our y value is going to be that 1. So now we can plot that point on our graph. 0, 1 means starting at our origin, we don't go left or right any, and then we're going to go up 1, and we can plot a point. Now from here, moving on to step 3, we're going to use the slope to help us find another point. Remember, our slope is 2/3. The numerator, so the top, is our rise, and the denominator, the bottom, is our run. So if it's +2, it means we're going to go up 2, and if it's +3, we're going to move right 3. From our y-intercept, so you always have to plot your y-intercept first. From your y-intercept, we're going to use the slope to help us plot another point. So from the y-intercept, we're going to go up 2, to the right 1, 2, 3, and we plot a point there. And that is our second point. And once we have that, we can take a straight edge. It's kind of hard for me on this one to do that. But take a straight edge, draw our line, and make sure we put the arrows at the end. Now let's look at how do we write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form if we're given a graph. So in order to do that, we're going to need two things. We're going to need the slope and the y-intercept. Just like with graphing a line where we had to plot the y-intercept first, when we're going to write an equation of a line given the graph, we need to identify the y-intercept first. So if we look here, our graph crosses through the y-axis at -1. So our y-intercept then is -1. Now what we need to do is we need to find another point that our line goes through, another nice ordered pair. So it needs to be a nice ordered pair that our line goes through. So what I mean by nice ordered pair, if we look at this point here, this is like 1, -1.5. It's kind of hard. It's an estimate. We can't for sure tell. So this is not a nice ordered pair. But if we go down to right here, this is at 2, -2. This is a nice ordered pair. So we can use this point to help us find our slope. From our y-intercept, we're going to see how much we have to go up or down and left or right to get from our y-intercept to that new point. So from our y-intercept, we go down 1, so it's going to be -1, and then we go to the right 1, 2. So -1 over 2. So our slope then is -1 over 2. Now, you might be asking, well, what if I chose a different point? Am I still going to get the same slope? And the answer to that is yes. I see another nice ordered pair that our graph goes through up here. So if we take a look at it, see how our graph also goes through -2, 0? We could use this point as well. So if we identify the slope from our y-intercept, to that point, we go up 1. So our slope then would be, I'm going to do it over here, would be +1 and then we go to the left 1, 2 over negative 2, which is the same thing as negative 1/2. That negative sign can move in front. So negative 1/2, see how they're the same slope? Same slope there. So we either go up 1, left 2, or we go down 1, right 2, still the same slope. And now that we have identified our y-intercept and our slope, we can write it in slope-intercept form. So y equals negative 1/2 x minus 1. So now let's look at like quiz question number 1. So like quiz question number 1, you're going to be given the equation in slope-intercept form, and then we need to find which graph represents our equation. So if we look here, we have y equals negative 3 over 2x minus 3. So let's first identify our slope and our y-intercept. Our slope in the number times the x is negative 3 over 2, and our y-intercept is going to be that negative 3. So now if we think of our y-intercept as a point, it's going to be 0, negative 3. Remember, when you are graphing using your slope and y-intercept, the first thing to do is plot y-intercept, and then you use slope to plot another point. So what we can do here is we can eliminate based on the y-intercept, and then we can check the slope. So if we go through each graph and let's look at the y-intercept and see if it matches up with our 0, negative 3. If it doesn't, then it can't be that graph. So looking at this first one here, notice the y-intercept is at 0, 2. Our y-intercept is 0, negative 3, so it should be down here. So it can't be that first one. If we look over on the one on the top right, that goes through 0, 3, but we said it's 0, negative 3. It has to go down here. So it can't be that one. If we look at the bottom left, 0, 4, that's not 0, negative 3. And that leaves us with the bottom right here. So let's just double check just to make sure. So 0, negative 3, that's correct. Okay, so now let's check using our slope. It says negative 3, so down 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1, 2. So notice our line doesn't actually go through that point, but the arrows, it's going to extend and it's going to go through that point. Another way that we could check is we could do the opposite. So instead of going down 3, right 2, we could go up 3, 1, 2, 3, left 2. Because that's going to be a positive over a negative, which still comes out to negative 3 over 2. So you just go the opposite way if you notice like it doesn't go up on your line exactly, just to double check. So this one, the answer would be this bottom right. Let's talk about horizontal and vertical lines. So if we first look at the horizontal line here, and we want to look at the slope. If we start at the y-intercept, so at the y equals, in this case, 4, and we need to go up and over to get to another point. So let's say we need to go here. So our rise, we're not going up any. So our rise would be 0. And then our run is going over 1, 2, 3. So our run would be over 3. Well, 0 over anything is always going to be 0. So the slope of a horizontal line, will always be 0. Now the equation of a horizontal line, because we have the y-intercept here, the equation of a horizontal line is always going to be in the form y equals whatever your y-intercept is. So in this case, it's y equals 4, since our y-intercept is 4. But the general equation, it's always going to be y equals that y-intercept, which we identify as b. So y equals b, whatever your y-intercept is. Now let's take a look at our vertical lines here. So for a vertical line, notice there's no y-intercept. For this one, there's no y-intercept. It doesn't cross over the y-axis. So let's just take a look at our x-intercept here. And let's try and identify the slope from this point. So let's go from 2, 0 to 2, 3. So our rise in this case is 1, 2, 3, so up 3. And our run is, we didn't go left or right any, so our run's over 0. One of the biggest rules in math is that you cannot have 0 as a denominator for a fraction. If that happens, it is undefined. This is an illegal move in math if you have 0 on the denominator. So what this means is that the slope of any vertical line is always going to be undefined. Now, the equation for a vertical line, notice that it didn't go through the y-intercept. So we don't, the y-axis, the y-axis. So we don't have a y-intercept. Only goes through the x-axis. So we only have an x-intercept. So we identify that x-intercept. So in this case, it's x equals 2, or the general would just be x equals whatever that x-intercept is. So let's look at this example where we're given an equation and we need to graph the line y equals -2. So since it's in the form y equals, it's going to be a horizontal line. Because what we do here is we go to our y-intercept at -2, and then we just draw a horizontal line. And that's it. So it's a little tricky because it's in the form y equals, and so anytime you think of y, you want to think of a vertical line, but it goes through that point at y equals -2. So when you go down there and then you draw your line, it's always going to be that horizontal line. So now let's look at one that's in the form x equals -2. So if it's in the form x equals, this is going to be a vertical line. We go to the point where x is -2. So from our origin, we go left 2. And we're going to just draw a vertical line. So just remember, if it's in the form y equals, it's a horizontal line. If it's in the form x equals, it's a vertical line. Now let's review the point slope form. So point slope form is y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. So it's a little bit different than slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form, you're given the slope and you're given the y-intercept. Point-slope form, you're given a point, so an ordered pair, and the slope. M is still your slope, and the point is this x sub 1 and the y sub 1. That's any point on the line. And then the x, the first x here and this y here, those stay as x and y. Those are your variables. So those are the ones that don't change. Those stay as x and y. Notice that it's also a minus, so you're subtracting here. So it's y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So it's y minus the y value is equal to your slope times x minus the x value. So if we're given the point and the slope, we want to write an equation of the line in point slope form. So once again, for your reference, point slope form is right here. Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. So our point is -2, 5, and our slope is 6. So if we identify our slope, m is 6. Our x sub 1, so that's your x value, is -2. And our y sub 1, the y value, is going to be 5. So we identify those three things, and now we can plug it into our point slope form, our point slope form right here. So it's going to be y, because that first y stays the same, minus our y value, which in this case is 5, is equal to our slope, 6 times x minus our x value, which is -2. Now, since we have minus and negative, we're just going to make that a positive. So when we simplify that, we'll have y minus 5 is equal to 6 times x plus 2. And this is in point slope form. We don't need to change it, we don't need to rearrange it, we don't need to simplify it. This is point slope form. So once we have it in this form, that is it. That is point slope form there. The only thing we had to do was just combine that minus and negative and make it the positive. So let's go ahead and let's look at quiz question number 5. Which answer is an equation in point slope form for the given point and slope? So we're going to do the exact same thing that we just did in that example. So if we think of our write out point slope form, it's y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times x minus x sub 1. So let's go ahead and identify the m is our slope, so that's 3. X sub 1 is our x value, which is -7. And our y sub 1 is the y value, which is 6. Now we'll go ahead and plug that in. So it's y minus y sub 1, which is 6, equals our slope, 3, times x minus x sub 1, which is -7. Now notice we have minus and negative, so we can make it a positive. So it's y minus 6 is equal to 3 times x plus 7. Now if we take a look over here, the one that matches that is going to be C. Now let's look at an example where we want to write the equation of the line that goes through the points 3, 2 and 5, 4. And we want to write our answer, our final answer, in standard form. So just a reminder, standard form is down here where it's ax plus by is equal to c. So your group of x's, your group of y's are all on the left-hand side, and then your constants on the right-hand side. This is good for when you're given the x and y intercepts, or you need to find the x and y intercepts. But in this case, we're given 2 points. So what we're going to do is we're first going to find the slope. So anytime you're given 2 points right here, the first thing you want to do is we want to find the slope. So we're going to plug it into our slope formula, m equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So if we look at our 2 ordered pairs and we identify, this is our first x value, and this is our first y value. So 3 is x sub 1, and 2 is y sub 1. This 5 is x sub 2, and the 4 is y sub 2. So now if we plug in that information, m is equal to our y sub 2, which is 4, minus our y sub 1, which is 2. So 4 minus 2 over x sub 2, 5 minus x sub 1, which is 3. So So now if we simplify that, 4 minus 2 is 2, over 5 minus 3 is also 2, so 2 over 2 is 1. So our slope in this case is 1. So now if we look at this question here, do we know the x or y intercepts? And in this case we don't. So what we could do is we can use another form to put it in first, and then we could rearrange it to standard form. So a good form to use if you're given the slope and we're given two sets of points is we can use the point slope form. And what we do here is you can choose one of the ordered pairs. It doesn't matter which ordered pair you choose, because once we get it in, plug it in, and rearrange it, it's going to come out to the same answer since it's on the same line. So let's go ahead and let's just use this first one, 3, 2. So we're going to use the point 3, 2, and the slope is 1. And we're going to plug it in to point slope form. So when we do that, we'll get y minus 2 is equal to our slope 1 times x minus 3. Remember that 3 is our x sub 1, the 2 is our y sub 1. Now, if it was asking for the answer in point slope form, then this would be our answer. However, it's asking for it in standard form. So we need to do some rearranging. We need to get the group of y's and the group of x's all on one side. So the first thing we would need to do here, we need to distribute that 1 through, which in this one it's really nice since it's 1. So 1 times x is x. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. And now we need to bring all the constants to the right-hand side. So we can add 2 to both sides, lining it up underneath its like term. So we have y is equal to x minus 1. And then from here, we can subtract this x from both sides of the equal sign. So we have negative x plus y is equal to negative 1. So now one of the things, so what we have here is we have this negative x plus y is equal to negative 1. One of the rules with standard form is that that a value needs to be a positive integer. So just notice here that a value is negative 1. So what we could do here, and we can do this because we're going to do it to the whole equation, to both sides. So we can multiply everything by a negative 1. So everything by a negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1x is going to give us positive 1x. Negative 1 times times positive y is going to give us a negative y, equals negative 1 times negative 1 gives us a positive 1. So just notice that all the signs just switched. So if it was negative, it became positive, positive became negative. So now that a value is a positive number, so standard form is just x minus y is equal to 1. So now let's move on to light quiz question number 3, where we're going to do the same thing. A line passes through the 2 points, 12, 5, and 8, negative 15. Which answer is the equation of the line? And if we look at our answer choices, notice they're in standard form. So ax plus by equals c form. So that's what we need to get our answer in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our slope. So let's identify our x1, y1, x2, y2. And now let's plug that into the slope formula. So m is equal to y sub 2. So I'll go ahead and we'll put that formula up here. Y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So y sub 2 is negative 15 minus y sub 1, minus 5, over x sub 2 is 8 minus x sub 1 is 12. So simplifying that on the numerator, negative 15 minus 5 is negative 20, over 8 minus 12 is negative 4, and that simplifies to 5. So we have our slope of 5, and now we get to choose either one of the points. I'm going to go ahead and choose the first one. Since both of these are both positive numbers, I'm drawn to that. So we'll use the first ordered pair and our slope that we found. And now we're going to plug it into point slope form first. So that's going to be y minus 5 is equal to our slope 5 times x minus 12. Now, since we need to get our answer in standard form, we have to do some rearranging. So the first thing we need to do is distribute that 5 through. So that leaves us with y minus 5 is equal to 5x minus 60. Bring over, we can add 5 to both sides here. So we have y equals 5x minus 55. Subtract 5x from both sides here. So now we have negative 5x plus y equals negative 55. Now remember that standard form, we want to have that a be positive, but if we look at our answer choices here, notice that we can see our answer choice right here. Part A is negative 5x plus y equals negative 55. So it would be A in this case. If that wasn't showing, just like I was saying in that last example, so if we looked and we didn't see our solution, remember we could multiply everything by a negative 1, so all of our signs would change. So that would be positive 5x minus y equals positive 55. So we would look for that if that one wasn't showing up here. But our answer choice is right there. And lastly, let's look at like quiz question number 4. So quiz question number 4 says, there are 4 inches of snow on the ground when it begins to snow 1.5 inches per hour. Which linear equation represents the total depth of snow in inches after X hours? So let's think of this here. Let's box or circle, underline some important pieces of information. So there's already 4 inches of snow on the ground. If we're thinking about terms of like a coordinate plane and what we've been working with, remember our starting point is our y-intercept. So it's telling us there's already 4 inches of snow on the ground. So this is the starting point. So that 4 is like the y-intercept. So we can say this is like the y-intercept here. Then it says it snows 1.5 inches per hour. Per, remember, means times. So we're multiplying 1.5 inches times however many hours it snows. And then it wants us to know which linear equation represents the total depth of the snow in inches after X hours. So we know if X represents hours and we're multiplying 1.5 times hours, we're going to be multiplying 1.5 times X. And then it wants to know how much total snow was on the ground. So each hour, 1.5 inches of snow grows or builds. But it already started off with 4 inches. So we have to add that to what was already there. Doesn't this look familiar? Mx plus b. So now we just need to add that y equals. So y is equal to 1.5x plus 4. This is saying you started off with 4 inches. Every hour, the snow grows by 1.5 inches. So that's going to be A. And that is it for today. So practice more if you need to. Remember, there is tons of online practice problems in the online lesson. So just go to 3.04 and click on practice. Take the quiz when you are ready. You want to aim for a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5. You can use the recording while you are taking the quiz. Watch the like quiz question, press pause, take your quiz question, rewind, fast forward. Remember, you have 3 attempts and only 3 attempts to take your quiz. Check what you missed before retaking. Check it off of assignments and have a wonderful, wonderful day.